Hi, this is Rivki, the head of podcasts here at Unpacked. If you enjoy soulful Jewish living, let me tell you about another incredible podcast from the Unpacked team. It's called Wandering Jews with Michal and Noam. Headed by the brilliant Michal Biton and Noam Weissman, two seasoned educators and scholars, Wandering Jews explores what it means to live a meaningful Jewish life today. With curiosity, humor, and heart, Michal and Noam tackle the big questions of identity, tradition, and how Judaism fits into our modern world. This month, Wandering Jews is celebrating its first birthday by sharing the top 5 staff picks. Every Wednesday this month, we're sharing episodes that have sparked the most interesting discussions and resonated with listeners over the past year. Whether you're discovering Wandering Jews with Michal and Noam for the first time or revisiting some favorite moments, now is the perfect time to tune in. You can find Wandering Jews wherever you listen to podcasts. I think you'll love it.
Welcome to Soulful Jewish Living, Mindful Practices for Every Day, with me, Josh Feigelson. I'm grateful you're here, and I hope you benefit from our time together. When I was in my early 20s, my childhood best friend and I toured Europe for 2.5 weeks. 2 young, single, good-looking American guys doing what young, single, good-looking American guys do in the summer in Europe. Drinking an occasional beer while touring museums and attending musical performances at the Vienna Opera House, at the Prague May Festival. Exactly what you've come to expect from your avuncular host here on Soulful Jewish Living. Then as now, I wanted to connect with the Jewish community wherever I went. We found Jewish cemeteries, toured old Jewish areas, and accepted the invitations of strangers to join them for Shabbat dinner. Also, par for the course. But there was one particularly Jewy moment of that trip that I still remember, but it wasn't a sweet memory. It was actually pretty jarring. We were taking an overnight train from Prague to Vienna. This was in the days before the Czech Republic was a member of the EU, and we had to show passports when the train entered Austria. So there I was, a Jewish guy on a dark train in the middle of the night, awakened by a uniformed officer speaking to me in German. Me, a Jew, on a train, a guy in a uniform, speaking German. While my family, by and large, escaped the Shoah, I can still remember the momentary terror that seized me. For a moment, I was triggered, emotionally agitated, seized by some cultural memory that wasn't even my own, and yet had lodged itself inside me. It took a few minutes for me to get my bearings, calm down, and remind myself that this was not a nightmare Jewish fantasy. Why am I telling you this story? Because this is the second episode in a mini-series devoted to understanding antisemitism and using Jewish mindfulness tools to respond to it in a healthier way. In our previous episode, I gave a general introduction to the idea of intergenerational Jewish trauma, and I invited you to try to notice where it might show up in your own life, whether or not your family of origin was traumatized as Jews. This week, I want to take the next step and talk about a word that's gotten a lot of press in recent years and that's central to the story I just told. That word is triggered. The dictionary gives me 3 definitions of triggered, and I think it's worth mentioning each. The first is started, set in motion, or released by a specified thing or in a specified way. This is the kind of triggering we might mean when we say the motion sensor camera gets triggered when someone walks in front of it. The second definition is related to the actual idea of a trigger, like on a gun, fired or exploded by pulling a trigger or releasing a triggering device. Then we come to the third definition, having an intense, negative emotional reaction to something, usually something connected with past trauma or a bad experience. This is the kind of triggering people mean when they talk about trigger warnings, and it was the kind of triggering I seem to have experienced that night on the train in Austria. What all of these definitions have in common is that the reaction is automatic. That is, there's no time between stimulus and response. Walk in front of the motion sensor and it activates the camera. Pull the trigger on the gun and it fires. Experience the guy in uniform asking for your papers in German on the train in the middle of the night, and you, well, at least I, feel overwhelmed by fearful emotions I can't control. Now, I don't really want to have a debate at this moment about trigger warnings and whether college classrooms are full of snowflakes. I think that's a bit of a dodge from what we're really talking about here. The fact is that these emotional reactions are real, and people of all kinds of backgrounds and political persuasions experience them. They are indeed triggered within us by external events, and when that triggering happens, we can wind up overwhelmed by our emotions. And that, in turn, can make us reactive, unable to choose a mindful response, and often behaving in ways that, if we could do any better, we probably would, but we can't. This leads us to our practice. In our next episode, we're going to drill down some more on strategies for creating more space between stimulus and response. For this week, I'd like to invite you to practice with noticing or reflecting on when you become triggered, particularly with regard to antisemitism. As always, if this becomes too hard, you are always free to press the stop button. And again, as always, if you find yourself being debilitated, please seek the support of a mental health professional. Allow yourself some time and space, either quietly in a meditative zone or perhaps on a walk or while you're journaling. Allow your breathing to slow down. Allow your mind to settle. And when you're ready, gently try to feel and notice if there's a moment that comes up for you when you felt emotionally triggered as a Jew. We're not talking about a trauma you suffered, but a time when something happened and the memory of a trauma or a negative experience was activated. See if you can mentally stand at a distance from the memory, like you're observing it from an airport control tower or a theater balcony. All you're trying to do here is taking an inventory. You're noticing that this thing happened. You're not trying to fix anything. You're not making any judgments about yourself. If anything, you can offer yourself some compassion. I'm so sorry you felt that way. That must have hurt. And now try to notice if, on perhaps a lower level, this kind of triggering might have happened another time. Not perhaps so serious, but maybe when you saw a post on social media and felt a surge of rage, or read a headline that triggered some less than mindful response. Again, just stand on that balcony and notice it. Like last week, the goal of this practice is simply to start noticing how this kind of triggering occurs, how it operates within us. Because for many of us, it happens more often than we might be aware of. And if we can notice it a little bit more, that will set us up to be able to disrupt the process, which we'll talk about next week. Blessings for the journey. Know that I'm on it with you. Thank you for joining us for Soulful Jewish Living, Mindful Practices for Every Day, a production of Unpacked, a division of OpenDor Media, and the Institute for Jewish Spirituality. This episode was sponsored by Jonathan and Corey Califer and the Somerset Patriots, the Bridgewater, New Jersey-based AA affiliate of the New York Yankees. If you like this show, subscribe, give us 5 stars, and write us a review on Apple Podcasts. Check out Jewish Unpacked for everything Unpacked related, and subscribe to our other podcasts, and check out the Institute for Jewish Spirituality. Most importantly, be in touch about what you heard today, what you'd like to hear more about, or to dedicate an episode. Write to me at josh@jewishunpacked.com. This episode was hosted by me, Rabbi Josh Feigelson. Audio was edited by Rob Pera, and were produced by Rifki Stern. Thanks for joining us.